Bonnie, time for ETF Friday. We're going to keep bringing you those pictures, of course, though, from the G20. In the meantime, there's an ETF for everything, even one that tracks the top picks amongst hedge funds. We're joined now by Tom Psarofagis to tell us a little bit more about this. Tom, take it away. What do we need to know?
Sure. So this is actually a pretty busy week for rebalances, but let's start with this one. So the ticker is GVIP. I'll call it GVIP for short. So essentially what this tries to do is track the 50 most commonly held names by long-only hedge funds. So to me, this is one of those products that doesn't have a whole ton of assets in it. It's about 100 million. But I think it's tracked very closely. I think investors sort of really look at what's happening with some of these rebalances. So performance-wise, it actually was pretty good at the start of the year, but sort of had given back a lot of it since the summer. But what I think is really important about this is it recently made some changes to its portfolio.
Yeah, talk to us about these changes. It's recently made some positioning changes.
Yeah, and so it does it every quarter. And the way it really works is hedge funds are required to file what their holdings are. So this ETF looks through the filings, and then at the end of every quarter, there's a little bit of a lag there. It then makes some changes. So I think there's some interesting names that got pulled into this new hedge fund ETF. Boeing is one of them, PG&E Corp. But also what I think is more interesting is from the sector positioning. So the ETF has always been very heavy in tech names. Technology and communication services, but what I saw in this recent rebalance was some more defensive names being pulled in, like utilities, some consumer staples names. So it's interesting to see if maybe hedge funds have been positioning a little bit more defensively.
Tom, after such a brutal month, do we get sort of an outsize rebalancing coming through? We don't see these kinds of months very often, and as a result of which, rebalancing probably looks a little bit more dramatic. Is that the case here?
So one thing to also put in perspective, so this is a busy week for rebalances because you have MSCI that does some big rebalances, and you had this also rebalance. But also remember, like in June, we have the Russell rebalance, right? That's far bigger than what we're seeing here. So the ETF market has gotten pretty good around these rebalances and handles them pretty well.
Yeah, MTUM is one that we're focused on today. Tell us a little bit about MTUM and what's happening with that.
Sure. So this one, I think, is sort of the opposite of GVIP. It's not only is it watched a lot, but it's big. It's about $10 billion in assets. This has become a really hot story over the last couple of years. Momentum's done really well. So it rebalances at the end of the close today. So what's going to be really interesting to see what names get dropped and also what names get pulled in. So it's important to note that this ETF is very heavy in tech. It's about 41% in tech, has almost no exposure to staples, has almost no exposure to utilities. So it'd be interesting to see with what's happened in the market in the last, over October and November to see what sort of names get pulled in.